Welcome, everybody, to the Hooligan Sports Podcast, Season 2, Episode 29. This is a huge episode for us, very special. We are joined by none other than the legend, the voice of the Kings, Hall of Famer, Mr. Bob Miller. Thank you, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
You're welcome, guys. It's nice to be with you and nice to be talking hockey again. I wish we were doing it live at Staples Center, but we're doing the best we can.
It's funny you mentioned that, Bob, because right before we went live right now, we were on this call, and the Dallas Stars just eliminated the Golden Knights to advance to the Stanley Cup Final, which we weren't planning on introing with that, but it's pretty big moment, like we're saying. Some good playoff hockey right there. I didn't see the goal, but it was a power play goal. Dallas is moving on. The Golden Knights are eliminated, so of course all us Kings fans are pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and we were watching that with Bob, and Bob was like, "Yeah, they need to wait 45 years before they can win their first cup."
That's right.
What's funny about that too is Bob broke the news to us. Bob's watching the game right now.
It was a nice shot from the right face-off circle and just on the short side, and great shot. Gurianov wins it for Dallas. Dallas was down 2-0, come back with 3 straight goals, the last one in overtime to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. So
look at that. Bob gives a game-winning call on the podcast right now. How awesome is
Too
that?
good.
Thank you, Bob. So yeah, thank you for joining us, Bob. The world wants to know, the Kings fans want to know, how is Bob doing and what have you been doing to stay busy and safe during COVID?
Well, I haven't been very busy since I retired and now kind of staying at home. And thankfully, we've had all these hockey games to watch. So I've been watching those ever since the tournament started. And now, of course, I'll watch the Stanley Cup Final. So that's given me something to do, and watching some movies and ordering food out, to going and picking it up. And so it's just been really weird not being able to say, let's go to a movie tonight, or let's go out to a restaurant and go inside and eat. I'm not brave enough to do that yet. So, but it hasn't bothered me. I'm good at being lazy.
So we asked our past guests this, Bob. We asked Army, we asked Foxy, we asked Alex Faust. What's on Bob's TV playlist right now? Are you a Netflix guy? Are you a Hulu guy?
Yeah, Netflix a lot, and Prime. Got both of those, and then whenever I can get some HBO stuff, we like that. So my wife and I usually have a movie on late at night, 8, 9 o'clock till 11, and we don't usually go to bed till about 11:30 or midnight. And so we should be well rested.
Yeah, and that's early for you compared to like leaving Staples back when you were announcing, right? Like 11:30 was like when you were probably leaving the arena.
Yeah, my whole career I did radio, TV, and so the TV, I was doing the late TV show in Madison, Wisconsin, and that was on at 10:20, and wouldn't get home till 11 or after, and then you just want to relax and cool down a little bit, and so I've always been a night person, not too much of an early person, but I don't mind getting up, 7 o'clock, 7:30, and get started and have a whole day ahead of me.
Any series in particular that you've been watching on Netflix or Prime or anything like that? Any shows or you've been binge watching or anything stand out?
We watched Ozark on HBO and enjoyed that. And we usually switch around and try and find a movie rather than a TV series. So you can watch a movie for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And that's usually what we go to is on Netflix or on Prime. I enjoy the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
On Amazon. A lot
of awards. So we've been killing our time that way and not getting too bored.
Very nice, very nice.
At our ages, we have doctor appointments all the time, and I said if it weren't for those, we'd have no social life at all.
It's something.
Go see doctors.
Yeah. Well, good to see you're doing well, Bob. Very good to see you.
Thank you. I feel well, and went to the cardiologist about a week ago, and he said you're you're doing really well. So I
Good.
hope it continues for a few more years.
There you go. Yes. Yes.
So I guess I'll start off with the questions. We, I read up that the legendary Chick Hearn of Lakers fame was the one who recommended you to Jack Kent Cook to be the play-by-play announcer for the Kings back in the day. Can you tell us how that went all about?
Yeah, a friend of mine had lived out here in Southern California, and he sent me a note that the Kings were looking for a announcer because Jiggs McDonald, the first announcer, was going to Atlanta.
Okay.
So Jack Ken Cook put Chick Hearn in charge of finding a hockey announcer, which I said was always kind of a little weird to me because Chick was so into basketball, and I've kidded saying I don't know if he knew a hockey puck from an English muffin, but he was going to find the hockey announcer. And so I sent him some of my material, and he called me. This was in 1972. And he said, "You're my guy. I'm going to recommend that you get the job." Well, the whole summer went by and I hadn't heard anything. And I was in Chicago I was working for the University of Wisconsin at that time. And I was at a Big Ten sports information directors meeting. And I saw Don Anderson, who was the SID at USC. And I said, "Don, have the Kings hired anybody?" He said, "Yeah, I just saw it in the paper yesterday. They hired someone from KNX." So I was kind of disappointed over that. And so I stayed at Wisconsin. Luckily, I did. We won the NCAA championship in hockey that year. And until the Kings won the Stanley Cup, that's the only championship I'd ever been with. But I called Chick later, and he was livid that nobody in the Kings organization called me to tell me that they had hired someone else. And I said, "Well, I'm still interested if anything turns up." Well, midway through that season, I'd gotten some word that they weren't too happy with the guy they hired, and they were looking around to make another change. So I was on a golf course one day. I came in at the end of 9 holes, and a woman said, "There's a guy that called from California. His name was Hearn. Wants you to call him back." So I
Wow.
called him and he said, "Hey, can you be here tomorrow?" I said, "Tomorrow?" He said, "Yeah." So I left the golf course, got home, got Judy. We had two kids, took them down to the grandparents, and left for LA the next day. That was
Nice.
June 6, 1973. And we landed at LAX, and the temperature there that day at LAX was 106 degrees. And Chick Hearn met me and Larry Regan, the GM for the Kings, and they said, "We're going to take you to lunch over at the warehouse in Marina del Rey." So I said, "Fine." So we're sitting outside there, and I'm looking at all those yachts and sailboats, and I'm thinking, how much am I going to have to pay them to take this job? And so, so it worked out. It worked out great, to get that job.
Yeah. Magic Johnson had a similar story when he said he came to LA. He said it was the first time he's ever seen palm trees. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it was like that for you. It's like you said, you've seen yachts, you've seen all these boats out here and all that.
Well, I'd seen them before because I did Wisconsin football and we played USC out here.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I saw them then, but it was weird to think that you're going to get used to this, that you're going to see these all the time.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like you're in some tropical island or something.
Exactly. Did-
Any good memories of Chick Hearn, Bob?
Well, we didn't do too much away from the games. I think mainly because during his season, if he was out of town, we were in town. We were sharing the forum, of course, and vice versa. If I was gone, he was home. So socially, we didn't do a lot, but he certainly was a very good friend and someone that if something came up, either on the broadcast or with management at the forum, I could call him and ask his advice and ask him what I should do in that situation. And he and Marge were very good friends. And he was there along with Vin Scully on the ceremony they had for me on my 25th anniversary during an afternoon game against the Blackhawks. And so it was great to see them there at that time. Yeah,
That's awesome.
we had a good relationship.
Very good.
Great.
So, Bob, you said you came here in '73, and all the way till 2017, you were the announcer. How much have you seen hockey evolve in LA and grow from '73 till present day?
Well, quite a bit. You know, when I started, a crowd of 8 or 9 thousand was considered a really good night.
Mhm.
And the ticket prices, I know Kings fans are going to love to hear this. The top ticket price was $8.75.
Wow.
And, and that would get you a pretty good seat at a playoff game.
Wow.
But oh, it's changed a lot there. I think
Oh
the
yeah.
biggest change was what I call the trade of the century. Wayne Gretzky in his prime being traded to the Kings. And I don't know of another player in their prime that dominated a game like Wayne did that got traded. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did, but
Mhm.
at the time, I don't think he was setting the records that Wayne was. And when Wayne got here, everybody wanted to come out to the Forum to see the Kings, all the Hollywood stars. Ronald Reagan and Nancy would be sitting at the glass. And it was just the thing to do to see the greatest player in the game, the highest score ever in the game. And so the celebrities were just all over the dressing room at the end of the games. And I thought it was just exciting. It was exciting for me driving to the game, wondering what will I see Wayne do tonight that I'll get to describe. Sometimes it was nothing special. Other times there were special moments that he set records, and it was just a great feeling for me to see him every night, and he was fun to be around and a very down to earth superstar. And it changed the way kids thought about the game. They wanted to play hockey. They were in the streets at that time playing roller hockey or with a tennis ball or something. And then because of Wayne, although he doesn't like to take credit for it, a lot of hockey rinks were built and more kids were playing hockey. And now I think it's great that we see California born
Definitely.
players being drafted
Right.
in the NHL, and not only being drafted, but playing in the NHL.
Yeah, that alone you can tell is a testament to Gretzky's impact. Is like you're saying, a lot more. We've discussed it on previous episodes, but a lot more, which they call the Sun Belt cities in hockey. You're seeing a lot more players, even using Austin Matthews, out of Phoenix. The stuff like that you just didn't see before, and now that's something that you can tell the game has been growing out here, and it's important. It's big, overall for the sport.
Yeah, I think Wayne's presence made this a nationwide sport rather than a sport with 6 teams in the Northeast
Right.
and Midwest. It was now nationwide, and more fans were exposed to it and love it and fill the arenas. And even though he, like I say, doesn't want to take credit for it, I think he was the big catalyst
He's
in that way.
he's very
And
humble about it.
yeah, and it seemed like you had a great relationship with the great one, Bob. Do you still keep in contact with him? Do you guys still chat and talk and meet up?
He still lives in this area, and I haven't seen him in person. Sometimes I'll see him if he comes to the game, which he does once in a while. He works for Edmonton now, so a lot of times I think he's up there again. But we have a good relationship. We told him when we started. Our producer said, we could interview Wayne every night after a game as one of the players of the game, but rather than bother him, we told him we'd like to talk to you on the air maybe 4 times a year. And he said, okay, let's do that. So we spaced it out so we weren't bothersome to him, even though we could have been every night. But we spread it around so there were other players that got a chance to be interviewed after the games.
Did other fans and anyone ever ask you why don't you guys interview Wayne more? Why is it only every so often?
No, well, I think we spaced it out far enough. They never came back and said, I want to see more of
We
Wayne.
need more
But
Gretzky.
Right, right.
So as far as you had mentioned, when you used to drive to the Forum, it was like, exciting going to the games. What can you tell me overall about the differences between broadcasting a game at the Forum and broadcasting at Staples Center?
Well, our angle is much better at Staples Center. It's higher, but it's steeper. And as you guys know, when you're looking down at the play, you get a better angle. The Forum was a more gradual slope and didn't have a balcony
Right.
really. And my biggest problem at the Forum was either fans going to their seats and I couldn't see around them, or a cotton candy guy who'd come by us with a full pallet of cotton candy and
Oh,
hold
man.
it up in front of
Just
me,
be
and I'd be
blocking.
looking around him to do the play-by-play.
You just got to yell down in front, Bob. Down in front. That is
Put that
great.
cool later.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
we had Foxy here a couple weeks ago, Jim. Bob, sorry. What were your favorite things
Jim.
about Jim Fox?
I've always said this about Jim, and I think, and I've told him this, he is one former athlete who never just took for granted because he played the game that he didn't have to do any preparation, that he thought he could just walk in and sit down and do the game. Jim prepared more than anybody that ever worked with me doing color. He was at every practice. He talked to coaches. He talked to players. He had charts that he made up that we both did, and he was thorough in his knowledge of the rules. And anytime there was a call on the ice, what I liked about Jim, he didn't say, oh, they blew that call. If it was against the Kings, Jim would say, that was exactly the right call. That's the way the rule is written, and that's the way it should be called. And I think a lot of fans appreciated that we weren't homers, and we wanted the Kings to win, obviously, but we weren't on the air cheering for them. And Jim was very good at explaining rules and saying that the right call was made by the officials. And I think the officials told us, you guys are really fun to watch because we didn't get upset at the officials. We may have in our own minds, but we didn't
But
do
he
it
didn't
on
say
air.
it.
Right.
But we always have that argument with fans, Bob. It's like, no, when you listen to Jim and Bob's call, they call the game as is. It's never, no, the Kings should have got that, or no, that
Right.
was against the Kings or whatnot. And people always say, of course, we're always rivals with our other rivalries in Anaheim, those announcers, and they're called the homers, right? But
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed the way you've called the games. You and Foxy's always been non-biased, and the storytelling, just the way you call the games. You've taught a lot of people hockey, which is explaining it on TV and radio. It's been great.
Well, we had fun together. We worked together longer than any other partners in the NHL at that time when I retired, 27 years. So we got to really know each other and know how to operate during the game, who's going to talk, and when you're going to talk, when you're finished. A lot of fans want to know, how do you know when to talk, and how does Jim know when to talk? And it took a few years to get that rhythm down to where Jim knew, okay, Bob's through talking and I'll talk here. But I had some really good partners down through the years. Nick Nixon, of course, who's doing the radio for the Kings now, and Pete Weber, who's doing the play-by-play in Nashville for the Predators. Dan Avey was my first partner when I got here. So I've had some really, really good people to work with, and they're a tremendous help because, like Jim or the color announcer, or it was at the time, could follow behind the play and pick up things that happened that caused a goal to be scored, while I would be concentrating on both teams, who's got the puck and who's going to get the shot. So I think it came off very well.
It's funny too, like you were mentioning when Jim Fox first joined, like you were already established broadcaster. He joined you as your partner, and you, I'm sure, had to help him along. And then as you retired, he kind of took that same role with Alex Faust. From when we were talking, we talked to both Alex and Jim, and he kind of was in your shoes in that standpoint, and he was helping Alex along and teaching him the ways too. So it's funny how, I don't know, like the circle of life or what it is, but how it continues moving forward.
Yeah. And Jim you know, I've said, if somebody walked in here tonight and said, Bob, tomorrow you're going to work for NASA and be at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, I wouldn't know what to do. And Jim, never having any broadcast experience, said, Jim, you're going to help Bob out in the booth. And Jim really worked at it, as I said. And I think I said to him about halfway through the first season, about game number 40, I said, Jim, I think you had fun tonight. Because I don't think he did before that. He felt at times he was embarrassing himself. And I said, I think you had fun. He said, I did. And then I would say, I think it was a year or so before you really came into your own as an announcer. He said it was more like 4 years where I didn't know anything about what was going on. So, but I don't think it was 4 years, but he's become an excellent announcer.
Definitely agree. I wanted to,
Imagine though, guys, really quick, that play-by-play by Bob at SpaceX. You know,
the
just
JPL.
counting down the
Yeah,
rocket.
rocket launches and
Elon Musk should pay Bob to announce a SpaceX launch.
yeah, can we make that a thing?
Yeah, let's make that trending, guys.
I would definitely
Don't,
watch
don't
that.
suggest that.
Bob for SpaceX.
So, Bob, we wanted to ask you about the 2012 Stanley Cup. Obviously, it was a long time coming for you. Specifically, your call. We know that even though the game wasn't broadcast, or your call wasn't broadcast live, you recorded it to tape. About your call specifically, I wanted to ask you, like, your preparation in that. Like, how far in advance were you writing out your, potential clinching call? Actually, this is a multi-parter. How long in advance were you writing your call? How nervous were you? Because I'd imagine you had been waiting for this moment for a long time. So when the clock is going, I want to know, what were you feeling? What was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, I wasn't nervous about the call, but I wanted to get that last comment that I made right and time it right. And the great thing was that the Kings, as you know, had such a wide lead, 6-1 with
Right.
5.5, 6 minutes to go. And the fans are chanting, "We've got the cup." And Foxy is sitting next to me going, "No, don't say that. He's so superstitious. And so I had written down what I said, and I read it over a long time before that game, several times, just so it didn't sound like I was reading it. I didn't trust myself in that moment of winning that first Stanley Cup to remember what I wanted to say, and I didn't want to stumble and fumble around on it. So with about 30 seconds to go, I had that piece of paper and I pulled it out and I had it in front of me and I was trying to time it that I would say just when the horn went off, the Kings are the 2012 Stanley Cup champions. And so I'm going along and the game is going along, but with 3 seconds to go, they stopped the game for,
Oh yeah,
I remember that.
and I thought, what do I do now? So then I just did a little bit more of whatever I said. I don't remember now. But then when the horn sounded, I said that, said what I said. And the great thing is, my son found someone who in North Carolina had what I said printed on a nice thick paper, and they sent it to me. So I've got it framed in my family room, and he's got the date and that I did the play-by-play and the score of the game, and so it's a nice remembrance of that. And a lot of people came up and said they were happy that that I said that. When I went down on the ice finally after the Kings won the cup that night, the players were all gone, but some of the other media were around and they came up, Bob, what did you say? What did you say when it happened? And, so I said it again on the ice and they were all cheering and everything. So it was a great moment for me and for all the fans. I was so happy for all the Kings fans who waited so long for that to happen. And really during that season, I don't think any of us thought it was going to happen.
Exactly.
Exactly. Kings didn't have a great year.
Yeah.
From December on, right? We get a new coach. We make these blockbuster trades in the spring, and it's like, what's happening? And then we just ransacked through the playoffs, like madmen.
Unbelievable. unbelievable. They have a 3-0 lead in every series.
Exactly. Unheard of stuff.
Yeah, and a 10-game winning streak on the road. And I mean, things just fell into place. And I think what happened in my mind in the first series against the best team in the league, the Vancouver Canucks,
Right.
won the
Uh,
President's Trophy.
Mhm.
We eliminated them. And I think in everybody's head, they thought, we can do it. We can win
Mhm.
in this playoff.
Oh yeah.
Then we
So,
swept St. Louis after that, right? It was a
yeah,
sweep, yeah.
Yeah, it was a 4-game sweep for
4-0.
St.
It was
Louis.
sweet, yeah.
4-0 over St. Louis, and that was a tough one. And then we played the Coyotes
Mhm.
and won that one in overtime with Penner scoring, and they were all upset because they thought Dustin Brown gave a dirty hit on Roosevelt,
Right.
and then the Kings win that, and then go on to play New Jersey and win the first two in overtime in New Jersey, and come home and win. And then I was down early for Game 4 to do some radio stuff before the game, and fans were saying, "Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night." I said, "Well, I hope you're right, but you never know." And of course, the Devils won that one. Then we go to New Jersey and the Devils win again.
yes.
I got nervous. I got nervous.
We're like, I don't know.
1993 flashback to me at that time. I was like, no.
Oh,
Please no.
then I thought, if they win the next game, we're in a Game
We're in
7,
trouble,
and who
yeah.
knows what's going to happen. So after the Devils won that game, the second game in New Jersey, and made it 4-2. We were going to the bus to go to the airport, and the New Jersey fans, the Devils fans, are all around the bus going, "You're choking, you're choking." And so I said, "I'll win this thing at home." So, and it's so great to win both of those at home,
Yeah.
you know, and just have those fans be part of it.
Rob Scuderi took one for us on that last
Yeah, he
game.
did.
He took a hard hit for us.
He got hammered, but he was tough, and he was a outstanding defenseman for us, and so you know he showed up every game, came back, and so anyway, it was just a highlight for everybody, you know,
For,
to
for,
see that happen.
for you looking back on your call, was there anything that you had wished maybe you had added or you had forgotten from it, or was it pretty much perfect in your eyes?
It was pretty much perfect.
That's what I love to hear. That's what I love to hear.
Uh,
I agree. I agree. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah. So Bob, 2012, we get the first cup. Everyone's hoisting the cup downstairs. Foxy told the story how you guys waited to make sure Brownie raised the cup, and you know he didn't want to go there. After that, though, what a lot of fans didn't get to see was that they actually brought the cup up to you to raise it. How did you feel knowing not only you mean a lot to the fans, but as well as the players in the front office?
Well, you know what happened at the end of that game? We stayed to see Brownie lift the cup. And then we were doing a post-game show live on Fox Sports West. So Jim and I went out in the on the balcony there outside of the restaurant at Staples Center, and so I was doing the game, and Patrick O'Neill came up and he said, "Bob, they're calling for you on the ice." And I said, "Well, I'm doing this telecast live." And he said, "I'll fill in for you. You go down to the ice." So that was nice of him. So I took off, ran down to the ice, got down there. I saw my wife, and she said, "Dustin Brown was skating all around asking, 'Where's Bob? Where's Bob? Where's Bob?'" And he had the cup.
That's so cool.
Man. That made me feel good. But they were all gone then. They were in the locker room. So I did get into the locker room. They weren't going to let me in. The security, even though I had the pass and everything, they said, "No, only team personnel, players, management. That's it." But one of our trainers said, "Bob, come in through here. Come in through our
Nice.
here." And then there's another door goes into the locker room. So I went in there, and of course they're all screaming and hollering, and I had my suit and tie on. And they're saying, "Bob, you got to have the drink out of the cup. Come on!" And they brought the cup over. They were spraying champagne. I couldn't even open my eyes. I had my eyes closed,
Oh, man,
and
this
I
is
said,
great.
"Where is it?" They're lifting it up to my lips, poured champagne all down my tie and shirt. And still got that tie. I haven't got rid of it. Uh, so, and then we went to a party up in the restaurant in the Staples Center, and later Dustin Brown came up with the cup and said, "Finally, I see you. Here's the cup." Handed it to me, and I've still got that. I don't think you can see it on the screen, but I've got that right up on my wall here, and it was one of the great moments of my life.
Yeah, you waited a long time for that moment.
Bob waited so long, but someone in security still tries to stop him from
Right.
celebrating. What is we gotta talk to Staples Security, Bob.
No, I
That
think what
sounds
happened.
pretty. That sounds. I'm not surprised that the Red Coats would do something like that.
No, I don't think it was them. I think it was in the final. The NHL takes over
Yeah,
all of that area.
Oh, okay.
that's right.
So I think it was somebody from them, and they didn't know me from anyone. And so even though you had credentials, they weren't letting the media go into the dressing room at that time. So, but it worked out,
It did.
and it was so great to have that parade downtown. See what 300,000 people on the streets and lifting the cup and cheering and everything. And then the second parade that they have out in the South Bay in Hermosa and Manhattan and Redondo Beach, because the players most of them lived out there. So they would see along the parade route people that they dealt with in businesses.
Right.
And so it was more personal to the players down there at that side of town.
So we're getting one of the questions right now in the chat is from Stephen Raboyne. He wanted to ask Bob, did Bob feel like he had more years of broadcasting left in him if it wasn't for the health issues that you end up retiring?
No, I might have been able to go on a couple more years, and yet when I knew I had to have a bypass surgery, and I had spent at that time 44 years with the team, and I was 78 years old, and I thought, why do this again? You've reached 2 cups in 3 years, and what more are you going to get? I know, I got more fingers, so I could use more rings, but you don't want to get greedy. And I think the health had a lot to do with it, really. I thought this would be the time to end it. And the Kings were so good to me all those years, and so good in my retirement. And even the final game that I did at Staples was the Kings' overtime win against Chicago.
Yeah, we were there. We were all there.
All there. All of us were there, actually.
We couldn't hear it, but we were there with you.
Yeah. And then the next night, the actual final game ever was down in Anaheim, and they did a great job down there. Alex Gilchrist and Aaron Tietz. When I got down to Anaheim that day, the Kings had me have a limo, had sent a limo for me because they were back-to-back games and we had people in town, and that was good because I could just kind of relax in the limo and do a little homework. And when I got there, the two people there from PR, Tietz and Gilchrist, said, "Come on, Bob, we want to show you the TV booth." And we were down going into the arena, and I thought, well, I've seen the TV booth several times. No, come on, you got to go up there with us. And I went up there, and they did an unbelievable job. They wallpapered the whole booth with King's memorabilia, and they had the timeline of when I started and when this happened and that happened, and had a picture on the wall. And they said, now that picture is on a metal frame. You take that with you when you leave, and you keep that in your house. So they were just tremendous to me. It made the announcement that night so that everybody down there stood up. Half of them were Kings fans, so I was glad of that. But I had a good relationship with the management down there in Anaheim. And even when I got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, they sent me a crystal star, heavy vase like with a star on top and engraved from your friends with the Anaheim Ducks. Very, very nice gesture by Burke and the Ducks to do that. So I've still got that here too.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Oh.
very classy of the organization, obviously,
Yeah.
acknowledging, your career and stuff like that. It's definitely, obviously, we're all Kings fans, but it's definitely nice to know that the Ducks still look out for our guys at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We still want to beat them though.
Oh, definitely.
Of course, every single time.
That doesn't change.
That is the gift that keeps giving when we beat Anaheim. So, Bob, what are your thoughts? Right now, since we're obviously in the playoffs, what are your thoughts on national broadcast games on NBC or ESPN in the past? First, in the Stanley Cup Finals, where I'm stuttering, and this is live, and I got to start this over again. Question. That's what happens when you do a live podcast. What are your thoughts on national broadcast games like the Stanley Cup Finals? Given your circumstances back in 2012, which that came to mind, do you think that they should have an exception of teams that looking for their first Stanley Cup championship in years, having a longtime broadcasters call those games on TV?
Yes, I do. I don't think it's fair to those broadcasters who follow that particular team or teams all year long to shut them out in the Stanley Cup final. I
I
say,
agree.
let the national networks do it, but let the guys that have done it all year long do it also. And I think the fans would enjoy that. I think maybe what the NHL is worried about, first of all, maybe the networks are saying, we're not going to pay you this amount of money if we can't have an exclusive. So I understand that. But on the other hand, I think maybe the league thinks, well, all those fans are going to tune into the guys they've listened to all season. And I say, so what? The rest of the country can tune in to the national telecast and let us enjoy that moment. I still, even now, when somebody wins the cup, I feel sorry for those guys who did the games for that team all year, and now they're pushed off to
Yeah.
the sideline. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it'll change. But we were very happy, lucky, and happy that the Kings said, "You and Jim do the game,
Definitely.
record it on a disc, and put it as part of a souvenir to the Kings," and they did. So if you got that Kings souvenir book at the end of winning the cup, you got that disc, and they put Jim and I on one side and Nick and Daryl on the other doing the radio. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
sides of it.
Is
And yeah, it was very nice gesture of the Kings too.
definitely nice that the Kings were, thinking ahead in that sense too, because I can't
Yeah.
imagine, like we're saying, people who've been fans of the team for years to get, robbed of that moment, like you're saying, because of national broadcast or something like that. At least we have something, because honestly, like, no disrespect to the national broadcast, but I feel like most fans are more partial to their home broadcasters' calls of these big moments, both in, like for you, both in 2012 and in 2014.
Right. I
Yeah.
think right now with this pandemic going on, I think the guys doing the games are doing a great job in both in Toronto and now in Edmonton. Some of them are in the building. Others would do it on the computer from their home. And sometimes I couldn't tell, is he there or is he not there? And I got worried one time we did a game like that when the Kings were in Berlin. We
Right.
didn't.
Yeah, I remember that.
We didn't go to Berlin, and Jim and I were in the studio at Fox Sports West doing it on the computer. And my fear was, am I going to be able to see enough of the ice to know what's going on? If the referee called a delayed penalty behind the play, am I going to be able to see him, or will I be able to see the time left in the penalty on the scoreboard? But they set it up perfectly for us. So Jim and I did the game. We didn't try to tell people we're in Berlin. In fact, several times during the telecast, we said we're not in Berlin, we're in downtown LA. But I was really happy when a few days later, the great Hall of Famer Larry Robinson was here, and he saw Jim and myself, and he said, "Hey, how was Berlin? I watched the game." I said, "Well, we weren't in Berlin." He said, "You weren't?" I said, no, we were in downtown LA. So we fooled a great defenseman Hall of
That's great.
I
Oh,
was
Larry.
satisfied that it came off well.
That's
Yeah. So, Bob, I can ask you this question now because you have not one but two rings. There's a famous picture. In fact, that picture's right behind you of the great voices of LA. There's Chick, Vin, and you. You guys took that picture, but you didn't have your ring yet then. Well, how did you feel when you guys took that picture knowing Vin and Chick had their rings, but you didn't have yours yet?
Well, that's a great story because we did a half-hour interview. Bill McDonald was hosting the interview, and
Remember that?
and uh, Vin was sitting on the far left of me, and then Chick Hearn was in the middle, and I was on the right side. And there was a lull in the conversation, and I said to Bill McDonald, I said, look at the rings on these guys' fingers. So Vin put his ring up and said, this is World Series 1988. Chick said, this is NBA Championship 1987. Now the camera comes to me. And as you said,
Oh,
I had no ring to show, but I said, this is my wedding ring, 1950.
nice.
And Vin said, that's the
great.
best one. That's the best line I've heard. So, and a lot of people have remembered that line too.
That's great. And when you won your first ring in 2012, Vince Scully is one of the first people to call you, right, Bob?
The next morning, I got
Yeah.
called by John Ireland to go down to be on his radio show, which was done right across at LA Live. And my wife and I, we didn't get to sleep until about 2 a.m. after that win in 2012. And then we had to be down to be on this radio show at about 9 a.m. And so on the way down, I got a call from Vin, and it was very nice to hear from him. Congratulated me on the victory, and it was a thrill to hear from him at that moment. And they played that later, I think, on the radio show that morning. So yeah, that was a thrill. As was the outdoor game the Kings played at Dodger Stadium, where Vin and I got a chance to be on the field and welcome the crowd. And I've got a picture of that too. That was a thrill for me.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. Was what was one of your favorite memories from Dodger Stadium, the Stadium Series? And that must have been it, walking out with Vin, right?
Yeah, that was one. And what I remember is the day of that game, I got to Dodger Stadium about 2:15 in the afternoon, and the temperature was 85 degrees.
I remember it was hot.
It was hot that
I
day.
remember it was
It
hot.
was I wonder if they're going to
We're all
play
right.
this game tonight. But they pulled it off, and just the setting was so great
Yeah.
because we were so used in those outdoor games to seeing snow and ice and everything else. We saw some ice, but it wasn't. We weren't trying to walk through it to get to our seats. And the setting with the palm trees and the volleyball beach volleyball
Right.
court at one end, and it was just a great atmosphere, and to see so many people there. The only downer was we didn't score a goal and got shut out by the Ducks.
Other
But,
than that,
Yeah.
Can't have everything.
right? It's funny
Turned out fine that year.
you mentioned that, how it was warm before that outdoor game. Think I'd heard a story you told before about the original outdoor game in Vegas at Caesar's Palace, and
That was hot.
it was not only a hot game, but I believe you said that there was grasshoppers that had
There's
covered.
grasshoppers all over the ice. Yeah.
Yeah, that was 1991. And what happened that we had played in Arizona, an exhibition game the night before, flew to Vegas, got in there, and at about 1 a.m, and I would look at the faces of young players as we drove down the Vegas Strip and saw all the hotels and everything, just the look on their face. And then we saw the marquee at Caesar's Palace, hockey, LA Kings versus New York Rangers. And that was a thrill to see that. We played out in the parking lot behind Caesar's where they used to have boxing matches. And so the day of the game, about 11:30, I looked out my window of my hotel room at Caesar's and it was raining. And I thought, uh-oh, that we're not going to be able to have this game tonight. So at 4:30, I went over to the arena, and there was a guy squeegeeing about this much water off the ice. And, and they had Jim Fox put on some skates and had him go out and test the ice. Well, the artificial ice is thicker than the ice at the Staples Center. So they could turn the temperature down. Oh, and what happened earlier, they had put a gauze over the ice held up by ropes to keep the direct rays of the sun off the
Oh.
ice.
Okay.
And they took it down and accidentally dropped the ropes on the ice, and they were hot from the sun, and they melted into the ice,
wow.
and you had ridges melted into the ice. So they turned the temperature down. They didn't flood the ice, they scraped it and scraped those ridges off, and then had Foxy go out and say, what do you think of this ice? And he went out and he said, yeah, it's not bad. So at 7:30, we were on the air, and 13,000 fans. And the other thing that sticks in my mind is that a lot of those fans had jerseys, not only Kings or Rangers, but other teams in the NHL and European teams, all their favorite teams. And it was quite a sight to see all those jerseys, and then to see them afterwards in the casino after the game, trying to win back some of the money they paid for the tickets.
It's funny too that they had Jim Fox be the guinea pig out there as far as testing the ice.
Right.
I wonder
Well,
also how much
was a
that.
skater. He could tell them whether the ice is good or not. And the other thing, after we played that game, the next day we flew from Las Vegas to Charlotte, North Carolina, to play an exhibition game. And the next day, Wayne Gretzky skated out on the ice and said, "I'm not playing." There were big cracks in the ice, and the game was called off. So we went from Arizona to Vegas, Vegas to Charlotte, North Carolina, didn't play the game in Charlotte, got on the plane and flew all the way back to LA.
Wow. So you're
Question.
Like we don't get enough travel anywhere.
right. So the ice in North Carolina was worse than the ice in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and it was indoors, but it was artificial ice there because for some reason the arena in Charlotte, they didn't put ice making facilities in there. So they had to make artificial ice even though it was indoors, and it was terrible ice.
Was that building in Charlotte the old Charlotte Coliseum, or is it the Bojangles Coliseum?
Boy, I can't remember now what it was where I think the basketball team played.
Okay.
But there was no ice facility there, so they
Okay.
held it.
So it was so that might have been the Charlotte Coliseum. That's where the Hornets used to play.
Yeah.
So
So there was a lot of travel and no game.
yeah, unfortunately, a trip out to the East Coast for nothing.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. So I wanted to ask you, as we were, we knew we were going to have you as a guest on the podcast. We were doing a lot of research and going over old interviews. And one of the things we came across that I had forgotten about. And when I was reminded of this, I was like, oh, how did this slip my mind? But in previous interviews, you had mentioned how it was not only challenging, but troublesome working with famous pest Sean Avery during his time with the Kings. What can you tell me about those times specifically? Because I remember there was a controversy at a time where he had called you out personally. So what? Yeah, I wanted to pick your brain about that.
It was something that we never did very often, and that is interview Sean live. You never knew what was going to happen. So in this game at Colorado, the first period, the Kings are dominating the game and leading 2-0. And late in the period, Sean skates in and skids to a stop and sprays the Colorado goaltender with snow. And he gets a 2-minute penalty, unsportsmanlike conduct. And all of a sudden, Colorado's right back in the game. And I know I saw Nick Nixon after the first period And I said, if I was the coach, Sean would not see the ice the rest of the night because it just took all the momentum away. Well, as it so happens, Sean then scores what turns out to be the game-winning goal.
Mm.
And now at the end of the game, I look down, we're up in the booth, Jim and myself, and I see Sean putting on the headset. And I think, oh my God, we're going to interview Sean. And I thought to myself, if I don't bring up that incident in the first period where he got the penalty, that's a bad interview. So I meant well when I said it. I said, well, Sean, you went from the GOAT to the hero in this game. And he said on the air, well, leave it to you to call me a GOAT that early in the game. That got me mad. And I said, well, you were one. And Jim did the rest of the interview. And a few days later, we traded Sean. And I thought, those were my last words to Sean.
Part of the goat.
That's hilarious. It's fun. It's funny how that works out at the end.
And by GOAT, I didn't mean greatest of all time.
Right. I was going to mention that too, because now GOAT has a different meaning. If you call someone the GOAT, back then, no, it's not the same meaning to it.
If I was sharp enough and quick enough, I'd have said, no, Sean, I meant you're the greatest of all time.
There you go. So did anyone else comparable to Sean Avery, or maybe take his title as far as like, not, I guess, what was the challenging or troublesome to work with? Any other players that would stick out on that kind of a level?
Well, we had a player named Randy Holt for a while, and he was really tough to deal with. At that point in my career, I had to handle the tickets the players needed in the next city. And so each player gets 2 tickets that he can buy for the game. A lot of people think players get 3 tickets. They don't. The teams get 2 free tickets. Usually the coach or general manager use those. And so the other players would tell me, I need 4, I need 2, I need 3. And I'd write that down. I'd come to Randy Holt, and he says, and we were in Toronto that night, where it's really a demand for tickets. Right. Most of the players are from Ontario. So Randy says to me, I need 18 tickets. I said, 18? Yes, I never asked for them anywhere else, so I need 18 for tonight's game. So I don't see how I'm going to get that. So he was really upset that he couldn't have 18 tickets. And I think what I did, went to the box office, and I had a pretty good relationship with the person who handles the tickets. And I think he, as I recall, I don't remember exactly, he did find 18 tickets, I think. So we got him for Randy. But, he was sometimes tough to deal with.
That's funny. Yeah. It doesn't sound like near the level of Sean Avery, but you never had to call him. You never had to call him a GOAT.
Right.
For 18 tickets.
For his 18 tickets.
Jim and I were sitting on the bus one night and to go to the airport, and Jim was on the aisle seat and I was on the window, and Sean got out. And Sean stopped right next to Jim, stares at him, and he says, my mother hates you. Jim said, well, have her send me an email. Oh, no, you don't want that. She's worse than I am. And so it must have run in the family.
Bob is turning savage in front of us right now. That is great.
Let's switch it up a little bit. Being a play-by-play man, being in Hollywood, you were the play-by-play man for the first 2 Mighty Ducks films.
I think I'm the answer to a trivia question. Who was the first announcer for the Mighty Ducks?
Yeah.
Yes, you actually are. Just so we're making that clear for any Ducks fans that happen to come across this podcast.
Bob Miller was a Ducks first announcer.
It wasn't Chris Madsen. It wasn't John Allers. It was Bob Miller. How did that come about? Actually, being the man calling the games in the first 2 films, did Disney contact you, or was it the other way around?
Yeah. I got a call from someone at Disney and who wrote the script, and he said, I'd like you to do the play-by-play of this, and I'll send you the script," which he did. And then said, so I was in Mighty Ducks, the first one, and Mighty Ducks 2. And then Mighty Ducks 2 was a non-camera. But uh, so the Mighty Ducks 1, I didn't go to Anaheim. The film was already shot, and they would show me the film on the screen, and we were in a studio at Disney Studios, and I did the play-by-play at that point off the screen. And then the second time they said, "We need you to come down to," at that time, I think it was the Arrowhead Pond, and, and come down there, and "we need you there at 8 in the morning." Well, my home at that time was about 70 miles from Anaheim. And so 8 in the morning. So I get up and I'm getting all ready to go, and the phone rings. "We won't need you till noon." I said, "Oh, okay." Now I was all dressed and ready to go. And so I got down there around noon, and they said, "Come here, we'll show you to your trailer." I said, "My trailer?" "Oh yeah, you get a trailer," like I was some big movie star or something. And I thought, well, what if, first of all, though, here's lunch is ready. So you got to have lunch. They have the big tent and catered
Catering,
lunch.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So I went in, had a little bite to eat. Then I go over to the trailer, and I'm sitting there by myself with nothing to do. And somebody came in and said, "You got to sign some papers." So I signed those. Then I thought, I'm going to just go in the arena and see what it looks like while they're filming. And I went in and I thought, gee, they've got a pretty good crowd here for this. And then I looked closer. Wait a minute, none of that crowd is moving. I think it was the first cardboard cutouts that I'd seen at a sports event. And now you see it
Pre-COVID.
in baseball every
Yeah.
night.
Yeah, pre-COVID.
Yeah. And so finally, we went on camera at about 8 o'clock that night. So I was there, I was supposed to be there at 8 in the morning. Luckily, I didn't have to be there till noon, but then noon till 8 before we did the scene that we were going to do. So as most people know, a lot of that is sitting around and doing nothing and waiting to do about 30 seconds of what you're supposed to do.
Piece of cake.
But I
So
enjoy watching that. They're still running that.
they
And
really
they're
do.
still paying for it too. I'm still getting paid.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus right now, actually.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So couple
Sorry.
couple of our fans on the YouTube chat are going crazy here, Bob. A couple of them want to know, what was your favorite and worst arena to call games from?
Well, my
That's a good
worst
question.
was easy, and it surprises some people. It was Madison Square Garden. Our vantage point was terrible. And Madison Square Garden the architect was the same person that built the Forum. So it was a slope, gradual slope. And we were so far back that if you didn't see the person come off the bench on the other side of the ice, you could hardly know that he was in the game. And I think I did more play-by-play off of the monitor in that building than anywhere else, because it just was almost impossible to see. Now they renovated it, and they put what they call bridges, a couple of bridges up on either side of the ice. So now when you'd go there, you'd be looking right down on the ice, and it was a great vantage point. In fact, in our first telecast, in the new way they renovated the building, I said, I've been doing games here at Madison Square Garden for, at that time, 42 years. And tonight is the first game I've seen. And everybody in the truck is laughing and everything, but that was the worst. The best, well, there are a lot of them, and most of them are in Canada. And I don't know if they have different codes where they can build the stands steeper with balconies than they can in the US. I know one day at the old Montreal Forum, I said, I want to see how high I have to be over the glass. I was only 8 rows up, and I was above the glass. And Vancouver had a great vantage point, Montreal, a great vantage point. the new building in Scotiabank in Toronto was good. Winnipeg, they almost had to lean out to see where the referees were because they were so close to the boards below you. You had to lean over, even in the old building in Winnipeg and in the new one. So some of those were my favorite